The disruption of undersea internet cables in the Baltic Sea is a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities of Europe's critical infrastructure. And while investigations continue, suspicion has immediately fallen on Russia, even if it was another flagged ship, a merchant vessel, which seems to have been involved in the incident, which seems to have been about dragging its anchor under the cables and then pulling it up. And the assumption is that that vessel is in alignment with Moscow, that it wants to harm the West, and that it's now sailed off into the or towards the Atlantic. There's a lady called Elizabeth Braw from the Atlantic Council who talks about this quite vividly, and she talks about the Swedish who have identified the vessel. She talks particularly about the grey zones of this particular problem, and how this is part of a general move to try and disrupt the life, the assumptions of the West, to encourage the West to question authority, to erode trust, to identify that things which we rely on are not safe, that the authorities cannot keep harm away, and that life can so easily grind to a standstill. And this is all part of that. Well, magic weapon scenario, and part of the idea of damage, and the damage that sows confusion and that escalates the tensions between NATO and Russia, and of course comes hard on the Biden administration's authorized approval for Ukraine to use the US provided ATACMS missiles to strike Russian territory, targeting the regions like Bryansk, targeting the ammunition warehouses. And Moscow's previously warned, of course, that such actions could be interpreted as direct NATO aggression, and has now reiterated that in the statement by Putin yesterday. Putin himself faces mounting pressure from Russian hardliners who criticized his perceived failures to enforce the so-called red lines, but key factors restrain Moscow's response. First of all, the ATACMS strikes, while symbolic, are unlikely to change the battlefield's trajectory, and the ATACMS, as Jake Bro points out, are not long-range missiles. They are relatively short-range. And we can't be absolutely certain that the Bryansk attack was a result of the use of ATACMS anyway. The Kremlin assumes that the strikes have been guided by U.S. satellite equipment run by the U.S., but that's certainly not guaranteed. They also assume that the attacks will remain limited geographically and therefore will actually avoid any serious escalation. And Moscow likely views retaliation against NATO as counterproductive, particularly with the incoming Trump administration promising a potential détente. Instead of overt military retaliation, therefore, Russia has increasingly relied on these hybrid tactics, blending sabotage, cyber attacks, disinformation. The Baltic Sea cable fits into that pattern. The choice of targets, the regional cables rather than the transatlantic links, suggest an intent to send a warning rather than cause irreparable damage, and Russia has perfected operations that blur attribution lines along plausible deniability while signalling its own capabilities. And the undersea cables form the backbone of global communications. To disrupt those could cripple financial systems, military coordination, public communication. We are so dependent on just small things like that. With Finland and Sweden's recent NATO accession, the Baltic region has become a flashpoint, amplifying the risks of sabotage. But it's so difficult to say, is this sabotage or is this an accident? Germany's defense minister, Boris Pistorius, describes this as part of hybrid warfare, underscoring the blend of physical and psychological pressure that characterizes Russia's current strategy. Cui bono? Well, Russia. And the timing is perfect for that conclusion. The Baltic cable cuts pose significant challenges for NATO. And given that we are so dependent on things like this, it makes you wonder, how on earth can we plan a bigger response, given the fact that we are so easily deprived of communication, so easily deprived of the things we take for granted. We have been encouraged to do banking, to do all communication, to put all our work online. It is so monumentally stupid. And we are so vulnerable. And Trump's alliance with or Trump's ascendancy, Trump's arrival on the scene, the impending Trump presidency, which looms large, his alignment with Russia on so many issues, and his disdain for NATO could weaken the alliance's cohesion. All it takes is a few prods to demonstrate how utterly vulnerable NATO and the West actually is. Russia could see limited sabotage as a way to pressure NATO while avoiding actions that could alienate Trump's administration. This dual calculus, responding to Biden's escalation while preparing for Trump's potential policies, complicates both Russian and NATO strategies and could see significant pause in Russia's response. At the moment, Russia has got Ukraine running around like a mad goose, just simply because of rumours, and the rumours are loud. The rumours are loud, and they're coming from Ukraine sources, they're coming from Russian sources, and, you know, if you're in the firing line, you don't know who to believe. Yesterday it was Odessa, today it's Kyiv, tomorrow it could be something else. And while Russia is making these threats, nobody needs to do anything. The Baltic incident serves as a wake-up call, I hope, for Europe and the broader West, encouraging us to strengthen our resilience, to put greater investment in the security of critical infrastructure, from undersea cables to power grids. It's essential. We cannot rely on these flimsy bits of cable. We need improved technology. International cooperation is needed to detect and attribute hybrid attacks swiftly. We need better understanding of, for example, lithium batteries. The whole Tesla thing is built on batteries which degrade, and we don't seem to know when they should be replaced, or at least that information isn't given to us. We've got short-term lithium batteries which are deeply dangerous, exploding cars, and we've got the long-term lithium batteries which are a little bit better, but we need to know when to replace them. Otherwise, these cars are dangerous, and anything with a lithium battery in is dangerous. NATO must balance deterrence with strategic patience, ensuring that actions defer further sabotage without provoking unwarranted escalation. And we need to find ways to conduct our lives which are not going to be dependent on flimsy bits of cable that can be dislodged, swiped. This is why the First World War and Second World War were so dependent on Middle Eastern oil reserves. Why Persia was such an important player in the war to both sides. And now we've got these underwater cables. We've got Wi-Fi, which isn't quite Wi-Fi. We've got satellites. You know, if there is war, how many of those satellites will be repurposed to something purely military? We will not have communication. The way I'm talking at the moment is a luxury that could be gone like that. The severing of the Baltic internet cables is more than an isolated act of sabotage. It's a microcosm of modern conflict. And Russia's hybrid warfare strategy underscores its ability to exploit Western vulnerabilities while avoiding direct confrontation. For NATO and its allies, the challenge lies in navigating, quite literally, these provocations without compromising their unity or escalating into a broader conflict. And as Europe braces for an uncertain global future, the lessons of this incident are pivotal in shaping its approach to security and resilience. Which way do we go? Do we lay more cable, or do we find a better solution? Because the solution we've got, what we've got at the moment, is deeply vulnerable to any form of accident, sabotage, natural catastrophe. And that isn't the way to run our world, is it?